My name is Elena Voss, and at 34, I am the kind of woman who still balances her checkbook with pen and paper because spreadsheets feel too forgiving. Willow Creek Estates looked like the American dream on the brochure. Rolling lawns the exact shade of money. White picket fences that never dared show a speck of rust, and a set of covenants thicker than most marriage licenses. I bought my little two-story colonial after my divorce because I wanted quiet. What I got was Patty Langford, the HOA president who treated those covenants like holy scripture and her clipboard like a scepter. The first time she knocked, it was a Tuesday in June, sun blazing like it was personally offended by anything less than perfection. I was watering the hydrangeas I had planted the week before, soft blue blossoms that matched the shutters exactly, or so I thought. Patty stood on my porch in her pastel pink blazer, pearls gleaming like little judgmental eyes, her niece, Ashley, trailing behind in a tight sundress and designer sunglasses. Ashley was 24, all legs and Instagram angles, supposedly here to help with compliance audits. Patty's smile was the kind dentists advertise, too white, too wide. "Elena, darling," she cooed, voice dripping with that fake Southern hospitality, even though she was born in Ohio. "We received 3 complaints about your mailbox. The flag is crooked. Section 4.2 clearly states decorative accents must align with the community aesthetic." She tapped her clipboard. "That's a $200 fine. First offense." I blinked. The mailbox flag was a tiny American flag I'd hung for Memorial Day, perfectly straight. But Patty's eyes were already scanning my lawn like she was hunting for sins. Ashley giggled behind her hand, pretending to take notes. I didn't argue. Auditors never do on the first red flag. I wrote the check, smiled the same tight smile I give tax clients who swear their yacht is a business expense, and watched them stroll away. Patty's hand rested a little too possessively on Ashley's lower back. A small detail. Accountants live for small details. That night, I opened the HOA share drive. Volunteer treasurer, remember? My login still worked from last quarter. There was an expense report for HOA Leadership Summit in Paris. Air France first-class tickets. Hotel de Crillon, 2 rooms booked as 1 suite. Champagne and roses pre-ordered. Patty's name on the corporate card. Ashley's name on the passenger manifest, listed as administrative assistant. The memo line read community education. I saved screenshots, printed everything, and labeled the folder Paris Compliance 2025. Just like that, the ledger started tilting. The fines kept coming. My grass was 0.2 inches too tall. My trash can have been visible for 11 minutes on Tuesday. My bird feeder was non-compliant avian attraction. Each time Patty showed up with Ashley in tow, both of them smiling like they were doing me a favor. Neighbors started whispering. "Elena's the one bringing down values," someone muttered at the block party. I smiled, nodded, and kept my books. Because the books always balance eventually. Patty announced the Paris trip at the July board meeting like she was accepting an Oscar. "It's vital for us to stay ahead of national HOA standards," she declared, hand on her heart. Ashley sat beside her, legs crossed, taking minutes. I raised my hand politely. "Will this be funded personally or through the community account?" Patty's eyes narrowed for half a second. "Personal, of course. We would never burden the residents. Lies have a smell. Mine smelled like Chanel and entitlement." I waited until the night before their flight. Patty's email was still open on the community laptop she'd left charging in the clubhouse. Careless, like every embezzler who thinks rules only apply to peasants. I forwarded the entire Paris itinerary to my encrypted drive, then printed the hotel confirmation that showed 1 king bed. The bouquet request for my dearest assistant. I slipped the pages into the same manila folder. Evidence was everything. The morning they left, I helped volunteer at the airport shuttle pickup. Pure coincidence, of course. Patty hugged me like we were sorority sisters. "Hold down the fort, Elena. You're so good at the little details." Ashley winked. I smiled back. "Safe travels. Both of you." The Uber pulled away, and I felt that cold, clean click of a ledger line being drawn. While they sipped champagne at 35,000 feet, I drove straight to the Ridgeview Luxury Lodge, the HOA's half-built community leadership villa that had sat empty for 18 months because the board couldn't agree on carpet color. It was a 4,000-square-foot monstrosity of glass and marble at the edge of the community, meant to host galas and impress prospective buyers. The developer was desperate to offload the lease. I walked in wearing my best accountant blouse and introduced myself as Patty Langford's personal assistant handling the final paperwork. The agent's eyes lit up. "We've been waiting for President Langford's signature." I had every document ready. Joint financials I'd quietly pulled from the HOA files, Patty's social security number from last year's tax filings, public record, darling, and a credit application already filled in her name. "She prefers everything in her name for tax purposes," I explained smoothly. "Erratic travel schedule. We'd like an automatic debit clause from her primary account, so we never miss a payment." The agent nodded like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. I added the addendum myself. Unpaid rent auto-deducted from Patty Langford's personal checking. Ironclad. That evening I drafted the email from Patty's own account. Easy when you have admin access. Subject: Urgent HOA insurance renewal. Body: Hi team, quick signature needed on the Leadership Lodge lease renewal. Boring legalese, but the underwriters are breathing down our necks. Click and sign by morning Paris time. Thanks, Patty. 4 hours later, the notification pinged. Document signed by Patricia Langford. Her looping signature sat there like a confession in cursive. While Patty and Ashley posed in front of the Eiffel Tower, I hired movers, charged to the HOA emergency fund I controlled. Only my things left my house. I left the walls bare, the lawnmower in the garage with a note for the new owner. I didn't cry. I organized. This wasn't rage. This was closing an account. The lodge lease was now Patty's personal liability, $6,000 a month for 12 months on an empty glass palace. The first debit would hit the day she landed. 5 days later, the Uber pulled up to Willow Creek. Patty stepped out in new Louboutins, Ashley giggling beside her, both tanned and smug. I was waiting on my porch with coffee in hand, the house behind me echoing and empty. Patty's smile faltered when she saw the bare windows. "Elena? What on earth?" I took a slow sip. "Welcome back, President. Check your email. And your bank account." She pulled out her phone. I watched the color drain from her face as the Paris expense reconciliation PDF loaded, the one I'd sent with the lodge lease attached and every Paris receipt highlighted. Her eyes widened at the auto-debit notification already posted. $6,042 withdrawn. You can't." "I didn't," I said softly. "You signed it yourself." Section 11B. Early termination requires lump sum payment of the full remaining term. Oh, and the board already voted unanimously thanks to the evidence packet I distributed yesterday. You're no longer president. Effective immediately. Ashley backed away like the house was on fire. Patty's pearls suddenly looked cheap. "This is harassment. I'll sue." I smiled the same tight smile she'd given me 100 times. "Please do. My lawyer loves tax-deductible cases. Meanwhile, enjoy your new lodge. It's completely empty, just like the life you try to find out of existence." The neighborhood gossip exploded by sunset. Someone leaked the Paris photos to the community Facebook page. HOA president's niece looks awfully cozy in Paris, trended locally by morning. The blog post that followed called it the Karen who fined herself into bankruptcy. Comments flooded in. "This is not just revenge. This is liquidation. Audit, evict, repeat." I stayed silent. Silence is the loudest invoice. Patty tried the victim route, told everyone I'd had a breakdown, that the fines were for my own good. But the lodge lease was public record now. Every month, the bank statement hit her personal account like a metronome of justice. She sold her own house in a panic fire sale just to cover the first 3 payments. Moved into the empty lodge with nothing but an air mattress and her bruised ego. The marble floors echoed every footstep. No furniture. No neighbors. Just a view she'd paid for with community money and community trust. 3 months later, she showed up at my new rental. Same quiet smile, same steady voice. Elena, please. The payments are killing me. Break the lease. I'll do anything. I slid the original document across the table. You made it legal, Patty. I just made it expensive. She signed the termination papers with shaking hands, wrote the lump sum check for the remaining balance, and walked out a smaller woman. The final package I sent her contained the keys to the now vacant lodge and a single cream card, paid in full. No note, no gloating, just the quiet satisfaction of a balanced ledger. 6 months later, Willow Creek looks exactly the same. Lawn still perfect, fences still white. But the power is different. The new president asks before she finds. And every time I drive past the empty lodge, now listed for sale at loss, I feel the clean click of final reconciliation. The books don't lie. And sometimes justice doesn't wear a robe. Sometimes it just wears a perfectly balanced spreadsheet and a very, very patient smile. The rumors didn't die easily. Patty spent the next 2 weeks spinning a narrative that would have made a marketing director proud. She told the book club I was unhinged, that the empty house was proof of my instability, that the lodge lease was some elaborate fraud I'd orchestrated while she was selflessly improving the community in Paris. Neighbors nodded politely to her face and texted me screenshots behind her back. She's really going with the crazy ex-wife defense, huh? One wrote. I didn't reply. I simply forwarded the chain to my lawyer with the subject line Exhibit A. Meanwhile, the automatic debits kept coming like clockwork. $6,000 vanished from Patty's account on the 5th of every month with a memo, Ridgeview Leadership Lodge, Langford Personal Guarantee. She tried disputing it at the bank. The manager, a woman who had attended 3 of our HOA meetings and knew exactly who Patty was, simply pulled up the signed contract and the time-stamped e-signature for Paris time. It's ironclad, Mrs. Langford. You may want to speak with your attorney. Patty's attorney, some fresh-faced kid who specialized in traffic tickets, took one look at the early termination clause and turned pale. Financially breathtaking, he reportedly called it. I considered that the highest compliment. By month 2, the pressure was showing. Patty's pastel blazers looked a little wrinkled. The pearl stayed home. She started parking her Mercedes 2 blocks away so no one would see the repo notice taped to the windshield. Ashley, the niece, disappeared from the community altogether, ghosted the second the first debit cleared. Turns out 24-year-olds with trust funds aren't interested in dating women sleeping on air mattresses in glass palaces they can't afford. The blog post that finally broke the story came from an anonymous source inside the real estate office. HOA Karen's Parisian affair ends in empty lodge nightmare. Went viral locally, then nationally. The comments were merciless. This is what happens when you weaponize HOA rules and forget the rules apply to you too. She found the wrong accountant. One particularly savage reply read, forget cancel culture. This is invoice culture. I read them all with my morning coffee, the same calm detachment I used to feel reviewing quarterly reports. Public humiliation wasn't the goal. Balance was. Patty tried one last power play. She showed up at my new apartment, smaller, quieter, no covenants, no clipboard queens, looking thinner and older. Elena, we can settle this privately. I'll drop all past fines. I'll even write you a public apology. I poured her a glass of the same Domaine de la Romancanti I'd opened the night the lease was signed. Paid for, of course, on the HOA emergency card before I closed it. The fines were never the point, Patty. The point was the hypocrisy. You spent community money on first-class tickets and hotel suites for your assistant. Then you fined me $200 for a straight flag. The ledger was out of balance. I simply corrected it. She stared at the wine like it might bite her. You're enjoying this. I tilted my head. I calculate. I don't enjoy. I reconcile. The final board meeting was the kind of theater suburbanites dream about. I presented the full audit. Every misused dollar, every Paris receipt, Every petty fine cross-referenced against the covenant she herself had violated. Her own mailbox had been crooked for months. The board voted 7-0 to remove her permanently and pursue restitution. Patty sat there clutching her pearls like a life raft, face the color of old milk. When the gavel fell, she stood up, voice cracking for the first time in public. "You'll all regret this. I built this community." Someone in the back row muttered, "You build it." She moved out of the lodge the next week after writing the lump sum check for early termination, another breathtaking number that cleared her remaining savings. The property went on the market as motivated seller. The listing photos showed bare floors and a single air mattress in the corner. Real estate agents started using it as a cautionary tale during tours. And this is why you always read the fine print on HOA documents. I never moved back into my old house. I sold it at a profit. Turns out pristine lawns and perfect compliance sell well when the former tyrant is no longer enforcing them. I bought a modest condo outside the gates with a bird feeder on the balcony and a flag that flies exactly as crooked as I damn well please. No one finds me. No one whispers. The quiet is the kind money can't buy and petty tyrants can't steal. Patty tried one last visit. She caught me leaving the coffee shop near my office, looking like a faded Polaroid of the woman who once ruled Willow Creek. "Do you still hate me?" she asked, voice barely above the hiss of the espresso machine. I consider the question the way I consider rounding errors, analytically. Hate was inefficient. It required emotional capital I had already written off. "No," I said. "I build you." Her face crumpled the same way it had the day the first debit hit. That single sentence carried more weight than any screaming match ever could. She turned and walked away, shoulders stooped under the weight of every unpaid fine she had once levied on others. The sound of her heels on the sidewalk was hollow, like footsteps in an empty lodge. The story didn't die with the final payment. It became suburban legend. New residents heard whispers about the empty lodge Karen before they even signed the covenants. Teenagers dared each other to sneak onto the property at night and take selfies in front of the dark windows. Someone started a TikTok account called @HOA Karen Ledger that reenacted the Paris trip with Barbie dolls and spreadsheets. The views climbed into the hundreds of thousands. Patty changed her name on social media and moved 2 states away, but the internet has a longer memory than any HOA board. I went back to my life with the same precision I'd always used. Mornings were for coffee and spreadsheets. Evenings were for the small park across the street where dogs ran and kids flew kites. No rules about kite height or dog breed. The freedom tasted better than any vintage wine. 6 months after the final wire transfer, I received an email from the property management company handling the lodge. Lease conclusion for Ridgeview Leadership Villa, paid in full. They asked if I had any interest in renewing. I replied in 3 lines, no interest in leasing. Forward future inquiries to my office. Keep it vacant. It's a monument. That night, I drove past the lodge one last time. The mist was the kind Seattle transplants joke about, soft, persistent, turning every streetlight into a watercolor smear. I parked across the street and looked up at the dark rectangle on the hill. A single security bulb glowed in the cavernous living room, illuminating nothing but empty marble and the ghost of a woman who once believed rules were only for other people. I whispered the only truth that still mattered. Every debt finds its collector. The drizzle thickened into proper rain. I pulled my coat tighter and walked away, heels clicking a steady rhythm on wet pavement. My reflection moved with me across darkened store windows, calm, solvent, completely free. I had audited the community, purged the bad data, and balanced the books. The monument would stand without me. Its purpose was served. A year to the day after Patty signed the termination agreement, another email arrived. This one was from a local lifestyle blog asking for comment on the infamous HOA revenge story. I instructed my assistant to reply with the same line I'd used for every reporter. A mess. Voss has no comment. Silence, I had learned, was the most expensive invoice of all. The final transaction came on a rainy Saturday. I was organizing my home office when I found the old leather-bound ledger from my first job out of college. Its pages were filled with my neat handwriting. I opened it to a blank page and taped the original Paris hotel receipt inside, the one showing one king bed, one bottle of champagne, and one bouquet of roses. It looked like a museum artifact now. I took a black fountain pen and wrote across the cover in my practice script, "Final balance cleared." I placed the ledger on the shelf, not hidden, not displayed. Just there. A reminder that sometimes the most important numbers aren't the ones that represent profit, but the ones that represent truth. I looked out the window at the rain, washing the city clean, and felt the same quiet satisfaction I get at the end of every fiscal year when every asset and every liability lines up perfectly. The books were balanced. The chaos had been resolved into order. And somewhere in a new city, Patty Langford was learning the same lesson I had taught the entire neighborhood. Never underestimate the woman who keeps the ledger. Because sometimes justice doesn't need a judge or a jury. Sometimes it just needs an accountant. And sometimes justice has a very simple name. Sometimes it's called rent. The seasons turned in Willow Creek the way they always had, winter drizzle giving way to tentative spring sunshine. My life settled into its own peaceful cadence. Work, coffee, the small park where no one measured grass height. The name Patty Langford became an abstraction, a closed file in the archives of local gossip. I had achieved balance, and I guarded it jealously. The encounter, when it happened, was utterly mundane. I was in line at the independent coffee shop near my office, mentally rehearsing talking points for a 10 o'clock merger meeting. A voice ahead of me, ordering a black Americano, sent a jolt of archaic recognition through my nervous system. It was thinner, wearier, but unmistakable. I looked up. Patty stood at the counter paying for her coffee. The last time I had seen her, she was signing away the final lump sum in my office. Now she was just a woman. Noticeably thinner, hair threaded with silver at the temples, designer clothes hanging loosely on her frame. She turned and our eyes met. The world slowed. The hiss of the steam wand, the clatter of ceramic, the low hum of conversation all faded into background static. Shock flickered across her face, then embarrassment, then a deep, profound weariness. The old Patty, the one who could smile while fining you $200, surfaced for half a second. She straightened her shoulders and manufactured a smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "Elena," she said, voice shaky. "I didn't expect to see you here." "It's a coffee shop, Patty," I replied, tone even. "People get coffee here." She gestured vaguely in my business attire. "You look good." I didn't return the compliment. Instead, I gave her the only truth that still mattered. "I'm solvent." The word hung between us. She understood. For me, solvency was the ultimate state of grace. It meant stable, secure, whole, not in the red. An awkward silence fell. She looked down at her coffee, then back at me. For the first time, the performer was gone, and only the woman remained. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. "The community, the order." I considered the question honestly. I thought of the years I had spent smiling while she fined me for flags and flowers. I thought of the slow discovery of her hypocrisy, the gradual realization that the entire neighborhood had become an exercise in fraudulent accounting. "No," I said. "I miss the version of me who trusted receipts more than words." She absorbed the statement, gaze falling to the floor. There was no argument left in her, no marketing spin. She simply nodded once, a small, defeated gesture, and turned to leave. The bell above the door chimed softly to mark her exit. I watched her go, a woman erased by her own bad data. I ordered my coffee, paid, and sat at the small table by the window. The encounter left me feeling not triumphant, but profoundly calm. It was the feeling of a final audit completed, the last outstanding query resolved. The books were truly closed. I drank my coffee and looked at the receipt on the table without thinking. I calculated a 20% tip and left the cash under the cup. The simple ingrained habit of a person with no outstanding debts, emotional or financial. As I stood to leave, a gust of wind sent a discarded newspaper skittering across the pavement outside the window. It flattened against the glass for a moment. The headline of the business section read, "Seattle's Most Powerful Women in Finance." A small, genuine smile touched my lips. A year ago, that title would have been the pinnacle of my ambition. Now I didn't need it. I had something far more valuable. I had balance. A year to the day after Patty signed the termination agreement, an email landed in my inbox from the property management of the Ridgeview Luxury Lodge. A sterile automated message with the subject line, "Lease conclusion for Ridgeview Leadership Villa." I opened it. The text was brief and impersonal, informing me that the lease agreement, paid in full, had now officially expired. It concluded with a polite boilerplate question. "Please let us know if you have an interest in renewing the lease. The property is now available for 12 months. That apartment had existed as a ghost in the skyline, a place Patty had paid for but never truly lived in after her one disastrous night on an air mattress. I had heard she left the state entirely, taking a job in another city, trying to outrun the story that now defined her. The lodge had remained empty, a silent, glittering monument to her folly, its rent paid dutifully from the lump sum she scraped together to buy her freedom. I looked at the email and the question of renewal. A different woman might have let the lease expire, letting the story end and the monument crumble back into just another expensive, empty building. But the accountant in me, the part that appreciated the symbolic power of a well-maintained asset, had a different idea. My revenge was complete, but its legacy was not. I hit reply. My response was even shorter than theirs. 3 sentences. "I have no interest in leasing the property. Please forward any future inquiries to my office. Keep it vacant. It's a monument." I hit send. It was a final quiet act of power. I was not just closing a chapter. I was donating the book to the library of local legends. That night, I felt a strange pull. It wasn't nostalgia or regret. It was the quiet, orderly need to close a file in person. After work, I didn't drive home. I drove to Willow Creek, parking my car a block away from the lodge. The night was quintessentially Pacific Northwest. Fine, persistent mist turning every streetlight into a watercolor smear. The air smelled of damp concrete and distant salt from the sound. I stood across the street, huddled in the collar of my trench coat, and looked up. The lodge was a dark rectangle against the bruised purple of the evening sky. A single dim security light glowed in the main living area, giving the vast empty space a lonely spectral shine. I stood there a long time watching it. My mind scrolled back through the ledger of the past 2 years. I saw Paris not as a city of romance, but as a column of expenses on a credit card statement. I saw the hotel receipt, the flimsy piece of paper that held the weight of an entire neighborhood's trust. I saw the lies in Patty's eyes, transparent and clumsy like poorly fabricated invoices. I saw the cool rage that had settled in my gut. Not a hot, burning fire, but the cold, efficient hum of a supercomputer processing a complex problem. The anger was gone now. I searched for it inside myself and found nothing. It had been fully depreciated, written off over time until its value was 0. All that remained was a profound, unshakable sense of balance. It was the same feeling I got at the end of every fiscal year after the final reconciliation, when every asset and every liability was accounted for, and the bottom line was a clean, perfect, indisputable number. The books were balanced. The chaos had been resolved into order. I thought of Patty's desperate final question in my office. "Do you still hate me?" My answer then had been a weapon. "No. I bill you." Now I knew it was simply the truth. My relationship with her had transformed from neighbor to professional transaction. She was a debtor who had defaulted, and I was the agent assigned to collect. The process was now complete. The account was closed. A quiet phrase formed in my mind, a universal law of finance and of life. I whispered it into the damp night air, my breath turning into a small white cloud. Every debt finds its collector. The drizzle thickened into a light, steady rain. The city lights reflected in the growing puddles, fracturing into a million glittering shards. I pulled my coat tighter. There was nothing more to see, nothing more to feel. The monument would stand without me. Its purpose was served. I turned away from the building, from the ghost of a community that was never really mine. My heels clicked on the wet pavement. A steady rhythmic sound. My trench coat billowed out behind me in a sudden gust of wind. I walked down the street away from the past. My reflection moved with me across the dark, wet glass of the storefronts. I was not running. I was simply moving forward. A woman who had audited her own life, purged the bad data, and balanced the accounts. A final line entered my mind. A perfect, succinct summary for the end credits of this strange, difficult chapter. Patty Langford took her niece to Paris. Now, she pays rent on my freedom. Fade out.